Good morning, Happy Valley, and welcome back to another edition of the Penn State 365 podcast. As always, I'm your host, joined today by our co-host, Happy Valley Insider's very own Dylan Callahan-Crawley. Dylan, we got a lot to go over today. There's some recruiting talk, there's some team talk, some scrimmage talk. But let's just start with the recruiting thing since it's the freshest thing on people's minds. Penn State lost a 2025 running back commit in Kiandrea Barker, who was a Texas kid when he committed, I think, and then went to Florida this offseason and also transferred back to Arkansas this offseason. Talk a little bit about how much of a loss this is for Penn State.
Yeah, we actually just published an article here just as we went live on the stink factor for Penn State here on losing to Kiandrea Barker, three-star prospect out of Arkansas, like you said. Second running back decommitment in this class for the Nittany Lions. He joins Alvin Henderson. I believe that's they've now had five, I think, total decommitments in this class, but you look at it, none were really major surprises, and I think Henderson, probably the one that stings the most, but at the same time, was not much of a surprise either. But with Barker, I think he's a good talent. I think he's going to have a chance to be a really good college running back. But for Penn State, it's really not a decommitment that I think moves the needle. They still have two really good in-state running backs committed to the program in the 2025 class, and Jabri Coleman and Tyke Hayes both have a chance to be very good for Penn State in the future. And then, you look ahead to the future, and in 2026, you have a Rivals 250 running back in Messiah Mickens committed, and in 2027, you already have a kid who's in Keenan Spell, who's probably going to be a four-star prospect himself. So, I mean, running back's the one position where, Jay wants out of the way he recruits. Penn State's never going to be really in a bad spot. I think the Barker decommitment is another one where, both sides probably figured this was the best way to go going forward. And nobody's going to lose sleep over it at the end of the day, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the sting factor piece that we both did, I think you had it 2 out of 10 for sting factor. I had it 1 out of 10. I don't want to hate on the kid too much, but like you said, they have two really good running backs in this class. They have two really good running backs in the last class. They have one in the next class, which they'll probably, if I had to guess, they're probably going to go for a second in that 2026 class.
Yeah.
And a good one in 2027. It's also a kid, as soon as he got that Arkansas offer, it sounded like he's been kind of entertaining Arkansas. That's the hometown school. He's from Arkansas. He was kind of entertaining them the whole time. So it wouldn't shock me to see him take an official visit to Arkansas at some point. I almost want to put in a future cast for Arkansas, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not going to be surprised if he ends up at Arkansas either. I think it was Arkansas, Duke, USC that was pushing him back in September, back in May and June before he, at that point, reaffirmed his commitment to Penn State. Obviously, that didn't last for long, but I expect him to end up at Arkansas and be a Razorback.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I know people are like, "Well, Penn State, what the hell happened? Lost another running back, another commitment this cycle." This is a kid that they didn't really keep. They didn't really care to keep, I should say. There's some talk about some off the field things. That's a little bit out there. It's neither here nor there, I should say. But they're not mad about this one. Just put it like that.
Yeah,
Basically.
they're not. Like I said, they're not going to. Nobody's losing sleep over this one. It was mutual, we can say.
Yeah, mutual decision. But anyway, on the recruiting trail, there's not really much else to talk about at the moment. Kind of just waiting for the dead period to end, which ends, I believe, August 31st. Yeah, I think it ends August 31st. So just kind of waiting for that to happen. They are still after offensive lineman. Malachi Goodman's the name there. Nowhere near a decision, I'm told. So kind of just waiting on that. Defensive lineman, they're obviously after Zahir Mathis still. They continue to do pretty well there in terms of flipping him from Ohio State. Now, it's not going to happen immediately. It's going to take some time. They got a linebacker in Cam Smith recently, which I
Yep.
did a little podcast on my own. And then that's pretty much it, right? I don't think there's anything else for 2025.
I think they're still monitoring the wide receiver position
Mhm.
just a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's not a lot, but there's stuff going on behind the scenes right now that maybe uh, we haven't been privy to yet. But yeah, for the most part, they're done in this 2025 cycle.
Mhm.
They may add another two commits But yeah, for the most part, it's going to be quiet the rest of the way, and it's going to be a major focus on 2026 and beyond.
Yeah. All right, so let's switch to some team talk. Some more devastating news to Penn State. They lost wide receiver Peter Gonzalez as Franklin called it, a long-term injury. So now he didn't say season-ending; he just said long-term injury.
Yeah.
So take that for what it is. I didn't think he was really going to play much this year anyway, to be honest with you.
Yeah, he was gonna definitely be have a tougher time, I think, playing this year. But I thought there was an opportunity for him to maybe at least get 4 games, then depend on his development.
Hmm.
He has been receiving praise from the coaching staff on his development physically, from from the point he when he came onto campus this
Mm.
off season. Apologies on very few hours of sleep on a new baby, but
You're good.
yeah, Gonzalez has been receiving praise from the staff since he stepped on campus. So I thought there was a chance he could maybe earn some time. Uh, but yeah, this I think uh, obviously makes that a very, very tough chance now to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't see him at all at this point.
Hmm.
And it's unfortunate. He suffered a major knee injury in high school, tearing his ACL as a junior. It significantly impacted his recruitment. He started at Penn State, which Penn State's not going to complain about, but would for a player who has passed, severe injuries, it's always going to be something to watch out for. We'll have to wait and see on what happens with him going forward, and if we ever receive some specifics regarding this injury. But like I said, James Franklin didn't call it a season-ending injury. He didn't disclose the injury, which again usually does if it's a season-ending injury. So it's not all terrible news for on the Peter Gonzalez front, but it's definitely tough news for the true freshman.
Yeah, I know after talking to some people recently, I think we posted this on the boards as well. Caden Saunders is a little dinged up, as well as Anthony Donku. So that's also something to keep an eye on. Now, Caden Saunders is probably what your starting slot this year, so that's pretty
Yeah,
significant.
yeah. I think Saunders would definitely be that starter in the slot this year. And yeah, no word on how dinged up, but I think um, if it was anything serious, we'd probably know by now. So
Hmm.
as of right now, I expect him to probably be ready to go for uh, the West Virginia game, but don't hold that to me either. But yeah, I mean, it's you never like to see injuries to
Hmm.
projected impact players this close to the start of the season. Penn State just 17 days away now or so.
Hmm.
So definitely not something you want to see this close, but still got 2.5 weeks to for everybody to heal up and get ready for August 31st.
Yeah. Franklin actually talked yesterday following practice. He mentioned Trey Wallace, who's a guy who has been injury prone, knock on wood, and Liam Clifford, as two guys have been notable standouts throughout camp. How do you think this wide receiver position kind of shakes out? Because we've also heard some rave reviews about Tyseer Denmark stepping up a little bit.
Yeah, I think we see Tyseer Denmark quite a bit this year. I would expect him to be a green light and
Hmm.
definitely burn that red shirt. The wide receiver position overall, though, I think Harrison Wallace has earned the role as the number one wide receiver based off his performances in the past when healthy.
Hmm.
Uh, and then I think it's a question about who's that number two. Is it a Julian Fleming? Is it an Amari Evans? Is it a Caden Saunders? I don't think it's a Liam Clifford, but is it a Liam Clifford?
Hmm.
But overall, I think it's a question about who's that two, who's that three, and how the rest of the depth chart falls behind that. I think Penn State knows Julian Fleming. They have a guy that they can trust to catch the ball. At least he's not going to put up probably major numbers for Penn State, but I think he's going to put up considerable numbers,
Hmm.
and I think he's going to be a quality, consistent week to week wide receiver for Penn State.
Yeah.
Amari Evans is where is he in his development? We saw a lot of him as a freshman, didn't see a lot of him last year.
Hmm.
I think he fits very well into the Andy Koltaniki offense, so I'm excited to see what he can do. And then in slot, I think if Caden can take that next step and be healthy, you have two really quality slot guys in Caden Saunders and Liam Clifford. Clifford's never going to be a big play guy consistently, but I think he's a reliable guy you can definitely have in that rotation. And trust when he's on the field that he's going to be able to make some catches here and there. So I think there's definitely some optimism around this position group heading into the season. But I mean,
Hmm.
if we're buying, selling, or holding stock when it comes to position groups, I'm definitely going to be holding the stock when it comes to the wide receivers. Just not enough there for me to say, yeah, let's buy into the hype with the wide receiver
Hmm.
room. And I don't think there's enough there to all say, I'm selling my stock. There's no hope here. I think this is a place where you just got to kind of continue to monitor how they perform the rest of the fall camp, and then no matter how they perform fall camp, it's going to be a matter of how they perform week one against West Virginia and beyond. If they don't perform on the field during game days,
Hmm.
what you do, during the week during practice means very little.
Yeah. Some other things that Franklin said. There's a couple position battles going on. One of them would be running back three. Now we know Nick Singleton and Katron Allen are going to split reps at 1A, 1B.
Yeah.
You can go vice versa. It doesn't really matter. But he did say there's some bumps and bruises. Cam Wallace has been nursing some of those injuries right now. So there's a little bit of a competition for that third running back between Quentin Martin, Cam Wallace, who's shown flashes before getting a little dinged up,
Yeah.
and then Corey Smith had a pretty big run apparently too in practice. So where do you kind of think that one ends up? I would assume Wallace, but I'm not
Yeah,
entirely confident anymore.
if healthy, I would assume Cam Wallace, but I think Wallace and Martin both play plenty this upcoming season, and I think there's a good chance Corey Smith sees the field a couple times. I'm not sure if Corey Smith would burn his red shirt this year.
Mm,
They Penn State usually is more aggressive on their running backs because they recruit the position heavily because of the talent they have that group. But also we saw Cam Wallace redshirt last year, so I
mm-hmm,
wouldn't be shocked if Corey Smith we see him 4 games, but then he redshirts. But I think Wallace probably earns 3 heading into the season. But I expect to see plenty of Quinton Martin as well. He's just too talented to keep off the field.
mm-hmm. Now I want to ask you about tight end two because that's where things get really interesting. I know we all know Tyler Warren's going to be the guy, but we know that Penn State likes to run a lot of 12 personnel.
Yeah.
Well, at least they did under the previous regime. I'm assuming it's going to be the same under Koltonicki, who is a tight end guru himself. Where does that kind of sit between Dinkins, Cross, Reynolds is starting to show some flashes. You still have the two young guys in Schaffler and Rapouille. Like, who's gonna win that one?
Yeah, James Franklin said on Tuesday Dinkins is a little banged up right now, which they need him to get healthy because they
Hmm.
expect him to have a big role in the offense this year. So I would say, if healthy, Cliff Dinkins is going to be the number two tight end heading into the season.
Hmm.
But if he's not healthy, if he's not available for week one against West Virginia, it does get a little bit more interesting. Luke Reynolds has been receiving a lot of praise from James Franklin so far this season, this off preseason. And Andrew Rappier, I mean, is like now entering his second year of the program. I would imagine they still would go with Andrew Rappier as number two if Dinkins is unavailable, at least to
Hmm.
start this season. But Luke Reynolds is definitely somebody who Franklin has already said, I believe said yesterday, is going to play in 4 games at least, and they're going to take it from there. Another kid just too talented to keep off the field. He's
Hmm.
a good run blocker already. He's obviously a great athlete, very good tight end. So he's going to be somebody to keep a close eye on this upcoming season. But right now, I think it's definitely going to be Khalil Dickinson if healthy. But I mean, Penn State has 4 tight ends here. I think that they're confident can go out and be productive if on the field.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some decent seasons out of Dinkins as a pass blocker, as a blocker in general, I should say. I'm just not sold on him as a receiving threat. And I know you don't have to necessarily be a receiving threat because Tyler Warren is probably the better receiving threat of the two out there. But I can't wrap my head around him being that good of a receiving threat.
Yeah, and it's hard to judge based off the stats. For his career, 9 receptions, 110 yards,
Hmm.
3 touchdowns. But when he has been given the opportunity on the field, he has shown some promise over the last few
Sure.
years. And you look back at last year. Let me see if I can find him here. Uh, 1 second. Uh, just had him.
You talking about
He
Dinkins
received
stats
he
or?
received decent PFF grades over the course of the season too.
Hmm.
67.6 pass grade there. Um, his pass blocking actually is what he needs to improve on. But yeah, when he's had the opportunity, he has shown some promise, and he's now going to get plenty of opportunities if he is that number two guy. Uh, Only had 6 targets last year on 4 receptions. So again, hard to judge based off what we've seen on the field so far, but that's just because uh, you know last year was really his first opportunity to be a guy in the offense, and with Penn State's offense last year, that just wasn't really much of an opportunity. I mean, even for somebody like Tyler Warren, you look at the so-called NFL draft experts on Twitter, and there's some who are saying how, you know, they're not sold on Tyler Warren, and they point to the stats. Well, you look beyond the stats, you just watch the game film on Tyler Warren, and it's obvious that he's a phenomenal tight end, has a chance to be a high NFL draft pick next year.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Dinkins is that level of talent, but I think there's similar could be said about Dinkins, that he just hasn't had the opportunity to show that much as of yet.
And last but not least, what Franklin said yesterday, talking about offensive line, he actually talked about the depth of the offensive line. So basically, from what it looks like, it's Drew Shelton at left tackle. We kind of knew that. Vega at left guard. We kind of knew that one. Although he did rotate and play some center this training camp, just as more of a reserve
Yeah,
role. Nick Dawkins penciled in at center. Sweem Wormley, of course, at guard, other guard. And then right tackle is where it gets interesting. He kind of mentioned multiple right tackles. He said that they're probably going to go back and forth between those guys, between Anthony Donkow and Nolan Rucci. Um, and then he also mentioned Cooper Cousins could play guard or
yeah.
tackle. Then he mentioned Nelson could serve as a swing tackle or guard, which I talked about with Zach on this pod. Where do we kind of see that right tackle spot finishing? I know he says they're going to rotate. Do you think that's actually true?
Um, I think unless whoever wins the job dominates out of the gate, uh, and just is, you can't take them off the field, I do think they're going to rotate. And you look at Penn State in the past, on the offensive line, they do historically rotate quite a bit
Hmm.
on the offensive line. Let me see if I can pull up the snap counts here. Um,
I mean, in an
but
ideal world, you want 7
yeah,
linemen, which
well,
that you do the math, that's 8 technically.
looking at their snap counts from last year, according to PFF here. Um, Let me count out loud here. One, two, three, four, five, six, uh, seven offensive linemen who had 100 snaps or more, six with 300 snaps or more. So really six main guys there, and that had that included 3 tackles, 3 guards. So I do think they're going to rotate at right tackle there. Um, this season, unless, like I said, unless whoever wins the job just dominates and you can't take him off the field. But I think Rucci and Donka will rotate. I think the starter is going to get the majority of the reps, but we'll see the other. I think Sal Wormley is going to be pretty entrenched there. Nick Dawkins and Cooper Cousins, I think we'll see kind of similar to right tackle, especially if Cooper Cousins continues to develop as he has. He's going to be hard to keep off the field. Um, Now, I wonder really where Alex Birchmeyer is in his development, if Cousins is backing up Wormley as well, because Birchmeyer is entering now his second season with the program, was a high recruit. Now, he was always a guy who was going to need time to develop into the offensive lineman he's going to eventually be, very much like a Nolan Rucci. Alex Birchmeyer's best football is not going to be year two. It's probably going to be maybe back end of year 3, year 4, pushing into maybe his 5th year. He's a guy who's going to take time. Um, but yeah, and then I think we're going to see plenty of JB Nelson as well. Uh, and then Javon Williams backing up Drew Shelton. Probably see him a little, but I think Penn State legitimately has one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8 offensive linemen, like James Franklin said, that they could probably put out there and trust to do a decent job this upcoming season. Um, so I definitely think we're going to see plenty of bodies on that offensive line this year. That should help Penn State stay healthy on the offensive line potentially as well.
Yeah, offensive line is such a crapshoot when it comes to recruiting. I mean, Vega was playing as a freshman. He was the lowest ranked of his recruiting class,
Yeah,
like out of offensive linemen. And you get a guy like Cooper Cousins, and Cooper Cousins is playing, or well, pushing for significant snaps as a freshman.
Yeah.
Similar ranking to Birchmeier, who you just mentioned. Birchmeier hasn't seen the field really at all. So it is interesting, but I will say I think Cooper Cousins probably ends up being a starter by midseason. I'll say at center.
Yeah, I think if he continues on this path, unless
He's too
Dawkins
good.
is playing lights out at center, it's going to be hard to keep him off the field.
Mm.
Um, and if he's not starting, I think you could see it pretty close to 50-50. But he's one of the best players Penn State's ever recruited under James Franklin, and has a chance to be a true anchor of that offensive line at center.
All right, and last but not least, I want to talk a little bit about the scrimmage on Saturday. Sounds like there are some ups, some downs. Sounds like the defense did really well. Surprise, surprise, right? Crazy. Sounds like the offensive line had some struggles. It sounds like Drew Allard had some struggles with accuracy down the field. How much, just hearing that in general, how much of a concern is that for you, considering that they threw the ball down the field like 5 times last year?
Yeah. So first, uh, I have heard basically from you, other people who have were in the know about Saturday's scrimmage about it. I was not there. For those who don't know, I recently had a child with my wife on August 3rd, so last weekend was definitely a no-go for me as I adjust to being a dad. But uh, so taking in the information, yeah, I think it's a concern if Drew is struggling with the downfield passes. It could have just been a bad day, but after last year where Penn State didn't take many chances, like you said, going downfield, uh, it is definitely something that is going to stand out if it's a struggle again, and a lot of people are gonna go, oh, here we go again. You look at his pass numbers from last year. He had, let's see, beyond 20 yards, about 32 passing attempts last year, I think it was.
Yeah.
33 pass attempts, 10 for 33, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. Uh, Definitely not great, but definitely not bad. Now, out of those 10 completions, 9 were big time throws, according to PFF, which is very much object, subjective,
Objectives. Yeah, you're right.
objective,
Yeah.
rather than subjective. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely if Penn State can't throw the ball down the field, at least on a consistent basis, and Drew can't be accurate, it's going to be tough for this offense to have those big plays that they were missing last year. So it's a concern. I'm not going to be overly concerned until we see it in game. Again, it could have just been one bad practice, but yeah. Outside of that, it's been it'll be interesting to see how that continues to develop in terms of the downfield passing. The defense being ahead of the offense, I don't think is too surprising. Um, I think there is a lot of optimism about the offense heading into the season, but I think the defense is always ahead of the offense in these
Mhm.
scenarios with in training camps. So not too
Yeah.
worried there. And now, was there another point?
No, but I did want to bring up the fact that obviously it's a new OC again, new system.
Yeah.
Um, do you think there'll be any kind of growing pains there? Now I know obviously Andy Koltanicki had that offense with Kansas rolling, like they're preseason ranked, which I never thought I'd say those words in the same sentence between Kansas and preseason ranked. But they were 17th in the country with 34.8 points per game last year. Now, do you
Yeah.
think there'll be some growing pains in year one under Koltanicki? Because I'm hearing Drew Alar's running options, and it's like I know he's massive, I know he's a little bit mobile, I know he lost some weight, but
Yeah.
that is a big body out there to be running an option with.
Yeah, it is a big body, and I think there is going to be some, success. It's not success. I think there's going to be some success with it. There's going to be some moments where we're like, okay, this clearly doesn't work when there will be overreactions to the failures, is what I'm
Hmm.
saying. Um, but yeah, I think there's a possibility that there can be some success with it, and Penn State can have success with Drew running that type of offense. He is a big body guy, but he has
Yeah.
shown the ability in the past that he can take off and have success with his feet. So I think it'll be interesting to see how much they do use it, because obviously Andy Nittany, on the other hand, has been praising Bo Prabula and his athleticism. How much are we going to see of Bo Prabula? Are we going to see Bo Prabula's specific package? I think there's quite a bit there to unpack as well,
Well,
which
we know
could be
everyone's
interesting.
favorite player on every team is
Yeah.
always the backup quarterback.
Yep.
So it's going to be tough. It does seem a little bit just watching Kansas highlights from last year that he fit the mold of what Nittany wants in a quarterback. Now, obviously, the passing's not there for Bo,
Right.
but the mobility and athleticism is there. I mean, Trace McSorley didn't have the greatest arm in the world, but look what he did.
Yeah.
So I don't want to jump the gun there. It's still Drew's job. It's always going to be Drew's job, at least for this season. I'd be shocked if it wasn't at any game this season. My not counting injuries, of course. Knock
Yeah.
on
Bar
wood.
an injury, I
Yeah,
don't unless Drew just absolutely is
shits the
terrible.
bed.
Yeah, he's going to be the starter for the entire season.
Yeah. So there were some struggles at practice. Defense still looks good. Shouldn't be too shocking. Tom Allen is a very good coach. Also, that plays a factor, of course.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much it. You got anything else before we sign off today? I know a little bit of a
Um,
quick one, but
I don't think so. I think just in general, this is it's it's always fun to overreact to practices and scrimmages,
yeah,
but at the same time, it's we only get a glimpse of what is going on a day-to-day
that's true.
aspect for Penn State, and football. Yeah, the season is kind of right around the corner. It's 2.5
Hmm.
weeks away. It's gonna come quickly. There's not much time here to clean up your errors and your
Hmm.
shortfalls and all that. So yeah, it's definitely not something you want to see still be an issue, perhaps at this point in the season, at this point in training camp, or in Drew's development as a whole.
Hmm.
But I'm not going to hit the panic button on the passing game yet. Um, I do think the offense is going to take a step forward this year. I think defense is still going to be good, even if the defense's numbers are still, even the defense's numbers are not as good as last year. I still think this is going to be a really high end defense. It's going to be hard to replicate that defense from last year.
Yep.
So I think overall, nothing more to add to that. Just that uh, I'm just ready for the season to come. Come for
Yeah.
17 days away. So it's getting close, and it'll be exciting once the season kicks off on August 31st against West Virginia.
Yeah. And we'll have more on that later on. Closer to obviously kickoff, but one more availability. Well, two more technically. Tomorrow, Saturday is photo day, so that doesn't count as an availability technically.
Yeah,
Um, there'll be no interviews that day, but next Tuesday there will be another post-practice interview. Most likely Franklin. I don't know who they're gonna. They kind of just rotate. I know Nittany and Drew Alar spoke. We have those videos on our channel right now. I'm assuming Tom Allen's probably gonna speak next week, if I had to guess.
yeah,
And
him
then we'll,
or maybe perhaps Sider or
yeah,
or
of course.
Terry Smith.
And
Um,
then we'll get more closer to game day. Franklin will obviously do his weekly pressers on Tuesdays, Tuesday before game days. So
yeah,
stay tuned for all that. So hit the subscribe button down below to get the latest on all the new videos that we've been posting. Um, that's pretty much it, right? I really think that's it.
yeah.
There's not much else
Other
to
than
talk
that, I
about.
mean, some high school football around the country is beginning
Yes.
this weekend. So I'm not sure if any Penn State commits are in action this weekend, but I do know that there is football starting up. I know Georgia begins this weekend,
Yeah.
and some California schools have games this weekend as well.
Hmm.
So that's always exciting that football is in some
It's
places
back.
officially back, and it will soon be back here in Pennsylvania. I believe first high school games in PA are next weekend. So
Yep. Coming up fast. So we'll have all the latest on the stats from those games for Penn State targets, Penn State commits, all that other good stuff. But yeah, for me and Dylan, that's another episode of the Penn State 365 podcast. Signing off.